Introduction. How do our brains get fucked up? Let us count the ways. Anger, depression, anxiety, stress, traumatic grief, substance use, crazy ass behavior patterns, dumbass relationship choices. Or as someone said to me recently, yeah, that's just a typical Tuesday. So much of what we call mental illness is really a case of brain chemicals gone batshit. And most of this comes from the stressful and traumatic life events we cope with. We used to hold our poor genes accountable for all the different ways we responded to an environment of stress and trauma. But recent research shows that only 2 to 5% of the diagnoses people struggle with come from a singular faulty gene. So we know that the cause of trouble is way more likely to be our environment and how we cope with it. These things, anger, depression, the rest of it, are adaptive strategies. If you don't believe anything else I have to say, I hope you believe this part. These feelings are normal. We're wired for self-protection and survival, and that's exactly what your brain is doing when it's acting all fucked up. Our behaviors are responses to the bullshit we have to deal with day in and day out. Our brains respond not just to big, life-altering traumatic events, but also to day-to-day toxic relationships and interactions. The small ways people push our buttons, violate our boundaries, and disrespect our need for safety. It's a hot mess combination of the two. And then, feeling fucked up becomes a vicious cycle. We feel weird and crazy for feeling weird and crazy. We feel like we are weak, or broken, or fundamentally flawed. And that is the most helpless feeling in the world. Fundamentally flawed means unfixable. So why bother trying? But what if you could understand where all of those thoughts and feelings are coming from, and understand how all the shit going on in your head came to be? What if it were actually entirely understandable? That means it might actually be fixable. This is important shit. We are way more likely to get better if we know why we are having a certain problem, rather than just focusing on the symptoms. If we treat stress, anxiety, or depression, for example, without looking at some of the causes of the stress, anxiety, and depression, then we aren't doing everything we can to make things actually better. It's like if you get a rash. Bear with me, gross analogy, I know. You can treat the rash, and maybe even make it go away. But if you don't figure out what you were allergic to, continued issues with rashes are pretty likely. Same with the brain. If you can understand better why you are doing the things you are doing, the getting better part gets way easier. And it doesn't have to be explained in a super complicated fancy pants way to make sense and be useful. I'm a therapist, a licensed counselor with additional certificates in sexology, integrated life coaching, and clinical nutrition. I'm also a board supervisor and I teach classes all around the state. I'm a trauma-informed therapist, which means I do treat the trauma along with the rest. This does two things. One, it means I'm actively avoided at parties. And two, my clients seem to get way better, way faster than the clients of my colleagues who don't incorporate trauma work and awareness into their practice. I'm not being all self-congratulatory here. My clients do all the fucking work. I'm just the coach. I hold up the huge banner that says, "Run this way, Forrest," at the proper end zone. I've been in the mental health field for enough decades now for you to say, damn, you're old. And I could tell you that our current understanding of trauma is fairly new. Several years ago, I worked for a program that was the first in town to run trauma recovery groups. In those groups, I saw that focusing on working through trauma histories rather than the labels we attached to them, depression, anxiety, addiction, etc., helped people get better. Since that time, I trained in several more trauma treatment modalities and helped several agencies and programs move into using a trauma-informed treatment model. I'm currently working in a private practice and my focus is on relationships and intimacy. Guess what the biggest issue I run into is? Trauma history. It rears its ugly head up everywhere. I found that when I explained everything that was going on in a way that was simple, my clients would say, "Oh shit, that makes sense." This book exists because nobody else has smushed all that stuff together in a way that is simple and practical. And I have seen how understanding all this shit helps people figure out the getting better part way more quickly. This may be bad for business, but I don't think everyone needs therapy. I hope everyone includes some kind of wellness work in their lives, but we each have to find the route that makes the most sense for us. Some people meditate, some people exercise, some people have a life coach, and some people see a therapist. Some people do something entirely different. It's all good. Because hey, you do you. Whatever that ends up being, I'm convinced that everything works better if you understand the why part and the end goal of the doing things differently, whatever that thing may be. Who is this book for? This book is for the people who ask, but why, all the time. The people who annoyed the crap out of the adults around them when they were little kids by asking questions about how the world worked so they could understand their place in it. Because the why is really needful information. This book is for all the people who fucking hate being told what to do by other people, who just want the tools and the information they need to figure out what to do for themselves. You may be figuring this shit out by yourself or with a rockstar therapist who knows better than to boss you around. Either way, you know you were in charge of your own fucking life when it comes down to it, because you are sure as hell responsible for all the consequences. This book is for the people who are fucking tired of hearing or thinking that they are just crazy, or stupid, or lazy, or too sensitive, or just need to get over themselves. Who are tired of feeling bad, but even more tired of other people thinking they enjoy feeling bad. Like anyone would choose misery. Like they think you are just refusing to get better. Like you want to be miserable. Of fucking course you don't. But you've been stuck and with no idea why. So this book is about the why you are miserable, so you can do something about it. What is going to happen in this book? So, okay, you're thinking, that's all well and good, fancy doctor lady, how is this book going to help? What makes this book all kinds of special and different from the 11 billion other self-help books toppling off my bookshelves already? I'm skeptical as fuck right now. Word, you should be. My bookshelves are crammed full too. I probably read most everything you've read. This book is different, for serious. First up, I'm gonna lay some science on you. Not complex, dry, boring as a box of rocks science, but holy shit, that makes sense. How come no one ever explained it to me like that before? Science. I found in my private practice that it doesn't take 12 years of college and $200,000 of student loan debt to understand this shit. I can genuinely explain what you need to know about what's going on with the brain in about 5 to 10 minutes, or an equal number of written pages as the case may be. Second, I'm not going to lay all this brain science shit on you and then say, yeah, that's fucked up, sucks to be you, and walk away. I'm going to go through a lot of advice that is actually practical and doable for getting better. Not everyone has time for an eat, pray, love type of retreat. And clearly, I'm not at all jealous or anything. Most of us have to get up every day, deal with real life, and try to figure out the getting better part during that process. Getting better doesn't mean you don't have to keep doing your own laundry. So, are we going to DIY this shit like rock stars? Because you know what? The situation isn't hopeless. You aren't hopeless. Getting better happens. If you were a client at my office, we would be wrestling these demons back into submission together. This is the next best thing, and it's the shit that works. Third, I'm going to go through a lot of the treatment options out there. I'm not against medication and Western care, but I do believe they belong in their proper place as one of many treatment options. Holistic care means the whole fucking person, and we have to build a plan that works for us. For example, my best line of defense is eating healthy, being forced to exercise now and then, taking herbal supplements, and embracing acupuncture, meditation, massage, and pedicures as part of my wellness regime. And I will fight anyone to the pain. Yes, Princess Bride reference. Over my belief that pedicures are therapeutic. For my son, it's football, weightlifting, ground exercises, meditation, a highly structured school environment, neurofeedback, and a combo of both supplements and Western meds. We all have unique needs. Pedicures, strangely, are not on his list. So I will throw in a lot of options you may haven't heard about in order to help you create your own plan of attack. And throughout the book, there will be many exercises that will help you process the work that you are doing. It's not homework. You don't have to pass a final exam. But having ways to process all the stuff that may come up for you is important. I'm not about to have you carrying my book around with your entrails hanging out because it has eviscerated you. Don't use it if you don't need it, but it's there if you do.